market intervention. Anytime that you have some sort of market intervention, your market is considered not efficient. At that time, you kind of say, oh yeah, she said that, but I didn't really know what that means. So today, this particular chapter, we're going to take this apart. We're going to look at what exactly is efficiency. Now, before that, let's get to definition for two types of cost. I know last week we talked about, oh yeah, your total cost consists of two types of cost. That is, anybody? Fixed and variable cost. Very good. She studied. She's ahead now. So some of you need to catch up if you don't know what she's talking about, because you should know by now. Now there's another two types of cost. One is called explicit. The other one is called implicit. Explicit means it's explicit. It's very obvious. For example, if you do business, if you want to open up a restaurant in Pembroke after you graduate UNCP degree, many of them did. Well, some of you might aspire to do that. That will be considered actual payment made to factors of production and other suppliers. So what does that mean? That means you need some direct costs, right? What are some of the things that you need for opening up a business? What do you need? Okay, money, but be more explicit.
A building.
A building, that's right. You can't just say, I have a business, a restaurant, and you guys just enjoy your building. What? You gotta have a building, you gotta have a store, right? Not just a building like a kitchen also. Yeah. You need a kitchen. What else do you need?
Tables.
Very good. What kind of equipment?
Kitchen equipment.
Yeah, oven and your frying pans, you know, and all those pots and pans. Can you use your hands? You gotta have all these utensils, right? This spoon, you know, wooden spoon where you can stir all that. What else? You gotta have something to cook with. Well, I mean,
Need food.
rice, yes, food, shrimp, pasta. Rice, oh yeah, I mentioned, oh, you keep saying rice. I'm thinking about opening a Chinese restaurant, yeah. Never mind. Fish, right? Meat, yeah, meat item. What do they like? Beef, broccoli, and stuff like that. You need, this are called raw meat. They cost money. You gotta go out and buy them. On a day when there's a football game.
Chicken.
Oh, they eat chicken on a football game?
Yeah, wings.
Oh, that, I see, okay. But so you know that day you're going to be crowded, the restaurant. So you go out and buy more that day. But then there are some days that are rainy days, you know, it's just cloudy. When there's a cloudy, people don't want to go out and eat. They just stay home and eat ramen noodle. I don't know why, but a lot of students do that. They don't feel excited about going out. It have to be sunshine or something. So now, yeah. And what else do they do though? Okay, Michael, you mentioned equipment. What about more than equipment? On your floor where you serve, there got to be some tables and chairs, come on. What else? Forks and spoons for people to eat with, napkins, aquarium, maybe, to attract the kids. A lot of these restaurants have this machine, you know, where they attract kids, you know, kids come in and put in a quarter to get some toys. Have you ever seen that before? So you see that's advertising to get the kids to come. So you think you yourself can manage if there are 100 customers coming? No way. You gotta hire people like some of you, waiters, waitresses, servers, right? So you earn tips. All this count. You know, all these are explicit costs. It's not free, right, Mr. Parker? You have to pay for your rent. Electricity, phone bill, whatever, Wi-Fi, you know, because customers want to have Wi-Fi when they come in during lunch break. Okay, that's explicit. Okay, raw, things that pertain to cost production, like labor costs, raw material costs, and equipment costs, and so on. What about implicit costs? Now, the word implicit means it's not so direct. It's implicit. It's hidden. Now, that basically is your good friend from chapter 1. Anybody could figure that out? It's our opportunity cost. Okay, for example, if you rent the building, okay, you do this restaurant business, or if you own the building, let me step back a little bit. If you own the building, basically you just own it. But if you lease it out to somebody to do business, you collect rent. That's the opportunity cost of you owning the building, or you're going to lease it out to somebody to collect this extra monthly rent, and that's your opportunity cost. That's one way of explaining it. We'll get into that a little bit more. Okay, resources supplied by the firm's owner. So let's look at a field definition, which is very important. We definitely will ask you this on the test, so you need to know. I'm not giving this to you. Only thing I give to you is the, what did I say? The equations on from chapter 4. Anybody remember? That wasn't too long ago. You should know, because then you know how to ask. If you don't know, you don't know what you're asking. On that day on the test, it's the equation on the price elasticity of demand.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
Okay, right. I hope you won't be the one who's asking on that day. Some other people would. You should hear it, yeah. Okay, so your accounting profit is very straightforward, total revenue minus explicit cost. Okay, and your economic profit is, remember I mentioned to you in the last class that your revenue, the total revenue is not your profit. They're not the same. What's the difference between the two? Somebody answered that question the other time. Yes.
Total revenue doesn't include the cost.
Very good. Very good. You're accounting major, right? Very good. Right. Total revenue does not include the cost. Whereas when you look into profit, you're looking at total revenue minus total cost. And what is economic profit? We're defining two different types of profit. One is accounting profit, total revenue minus total cost. In this case, the total cost is referring to that explicit cost of doing business. Now, what about economic profit? There's a big difference between how the economists and the accountants do their profit. The economist cares about our good friend, opportunity cost. They always say you have to include that opportunity cost. Remember chapter 1, we talked about it? One of the pitfalls is do not ignore this opportunity cost. So with economic profit, you see that they not only care about your accounting profit, which is total revenue minus explicit cost, they add one more cost, which is the implicit cost of doing business. And then the next type of profit, number 3, is known as normal profit. Okay, what is normal profit? It's the difference between accounting profit and economic profit. That's it. So what exactly is the difference between accounting and economic profit? Somebody tell me. Yes?
Implicit cost.
Very good. You are with me. So the difference between normal profit is the same. Let me write this down because this will help you with one of the questions on the test. So your normal cost, normal profit is the same as what Ethan just said, that is implicit cost. That basically is the difference between accounting profit and economic profit. Or you could say, what's the other word we use? Opportunity cost, yes. And these 3 terms are used, as you could see now, very important, synonymously, interchangeably. Okay, economic loss is economic profit less than 0. So if you're seeing pink, so in other words, you're looking at this, the one with the implicit cost. If that term is negative, then you're experiencing economic loss instead of profit. And if they are more or less the same, what we call break even. Remember I used that term before and I drew a phase that's kind of like neutral. So you're at the point which we call a freezing point, in which you're not quite making any, and again, you know, like I said, this is in your book. So if you refer to your book, right, you don't have to copy word for word. Because by now, you know, some of you bring your, yeah, this is a class I keep giving extra credit for taking notes or something. Is this the right book? Oh, yeah, it is. What chapter we in chapter 6? What page number are we on? 61?
161.
161. Very good. Okay, we got it somewhere around it. So all the explanations and the definitions are there. So look at this, your book, there's a diagram that looks like that. How many of you play Pac-Man? Okay, that was my first video game, definitely. And I enjoy it. Because, you know, keep eating stuff. And then you get cherries, right? You get your rewards, all that. So this looks like Pac-Man here. Now we're using this tree circle or pie, you know, pies, apple pies, all that, to represent this concept here. So number one, you got total revenue. And then you have total revenue minus explicit cost, which means it's your accounting profit, what you just wrote down. But if you take total revenue minus explicit cost and minus that green one, which is your implicit cost, and really is your normal profit, is your opportunity cost, what we wrote down there interchangeably, then the last, the things that remain is that small piece of pie, the pink one, which is your economic profit. So all that is saying is that if you add up everything here, economic profit and your so-called implicit, well, we use that to try to explain that equation. So if it helps at all, some of you might think the equation is more straightforward. So that's all that it is saying, that if you have a total revenue, you minus off explicit cost, minus off implicit cost, what you have remained is your economic profit. Just alternative way of trying to help you to remember. Let's look at one example. Okay, Pot Buffett. He's selling corn. His revenue are $22K a year. Okay, very good. He pays $10,000 or $10K per year in explicit cost. So then, you know, with that information, you can figure out what is accounting profit, right? Okay, total revenue minus the explicit cost. Because we come out and tell you that's explicit cost. Sometimes we don't come out and tell you, you have to figure it out. Okay, so then what is the number here is come down here. Accounting profit will be 22K minus 10K, you got 12K. That's very straightforward. Everybody can do that. Now let's look at that third line right here. He could earn 11K or 11,000 at another job he likes equally well. And we are very kind here to remind you or give you a hint that this means we're talking about implicit cost or opportunity cost. Now you have to smell it on your test to know that we're talking about implicit cost. And we don't always come in and tell you like, hint, this, we're talking about opportunity cost. You pay attention here, we don't. You have to recognize it, smell it coming, and see, oh, okay, you could earn 11,000 in another job you like. See, that's your opportunity cost. For example, I'm standing here today, right, teaching an economics class. What is my earnings? I'm not going to tell you, but I'm a state employee. They pay me my yearly annual salaries. Well, I could also tell you that if I get a job being a consultant in big city like New York City, Boston, Dallas, or San Francisco, I could get a little bit more doing that than being a professor here. But you know, it's a trade-off. So that would be my opportunity cost. Whatever amount that is, that I could have worked elsewhere. Okay? So that is your opportunity cost. So now, come down to the last part. How do you calculate economic profit? You take total revenue minus total cost, essentially is your accounting profit. You minus further the implicit cost, or the normal profit, or the opportunity cost of doing business. So in this case, that would be 11,000. Everybody with me? I think it's very straightforward, so you got 1K at the end. So depending on what we ask you, okay, so accounting profit is more straightforward. Economic profit, you have to figure out that last part here. Let me give you an example of my own life. When I was a graduate student in University of Texas at Austin, oh, this was like back in the 90s. Were you all born yet? You all were born in mid-90s, most of you, yeah. Okay, most of you. I had 4 red Subaru. I don't know why. I was crazy about Subaru, 4-door sedan. Well, anyway, somebody helped me to buy my first one. It was a red station wagon, Subaru. Doesn't have a power steering. So, you know, it was hard. I had an accident. I was rear-ended 5 times in my lifetime, and I'm alive today. No problem. I don't know, something to do with that red car, you know. Since it's Valentine's Day, I could tell stories like that. How many of you have red car? Whoa! Like, again, let me see a show of hands. This is very interesting. I must count. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. Good. Beware of red car. Anyway, I was rear-ended the first red car.
Yeah.
And I was compensated $1,300. I remember that. Because, you know, if you rent someone in the back, that's your fault. And I didn't know better. I just assumed, you know. I went to the insurance company, they asked me questions like, that's all you have? You have an x-ray and all that? Is that it? You know? And they make me sign that document. You're not supposed to sign so soon. You're supposed to do all your checks, you know, and make sure you're okay, your back is not hurting, all that. So I didn't know that. I brought that to them, and then, you know, they see that I'm naive, and I'm just kind of like, ooh, you know, young and naive. And so they took advantage of me and said, oh, yeah. So that's all you have, that damage, you know, back there, just a little bit of dent, you know, we'll fix that, and so they made me sign something, which I was naive. I signed it, because I knew I could have got more if I waited. Not that I'm trying to get more, but, you know, if you go for more tests, it was more, sometimes there are after effects, whiplash and, you know, whiplash, yeah, and things like that. Anyway, so I signed that thing. They gave me a check for $1,300, and I bought my very first computer. That was nice, and I didn't get it fixed. You know, I say, I don't care cosmetics, so I just buy a nice computer, very first one. Then the next few years, I was rear-ended again, red Subaru. I was rear-ended about 3 times with red Subaru. I keep changing car. Every time I wanted to get a red Subaru, they're all red. I don't know what happened. I went to this lot one time, there were only 2 cars there, because I only one Subaru, 4-door sedan. There were 2 cars, one is black, one is red. Obvious. I picked the red one. I didn't want the red one, but I didn't really want the black one because Texas is very hot, you know, in the summertime, black car is, how many of you have black car? Okay, not so many as red car. So anyway, that was what happened. So I say that to say, to get to the point. The point here is, the second time I got rear-ended, I got smart. I took out my spreadsheet, remember my computer I have? So I used my spreadsheet. I say, okay, I went to see the doctor, the gas money was da-da-da so much. I went to see the doctor, the time spent waiting for the doctors was da-da-da-da, 3 hours, and I did all that in spreadsheet, very detailed. I submitted it to the insurance company and say, very smart lady. They pay me every single piece that I put down on my spreadsheet. And that is opportunity cost. Mm-hmm. Yes, when you go see doctors, you put in gas, you should put it down. That's not explicit cost. Yeah, not just like seeing doctors, yeah, $100, you know, or your copay. But more than that, it's your time. So I put down how much time I get paid for a graduate assistant. Yes, $100 per hour. So if I were to go see a doctor's for how long? 3 hours, I put down 300. I could have, that was my opportunity cost. I could have earned $300 during that time, but I was waiting in the doctor's office. So some of you learn from my experience. Be proud that you're an economics student. Show them that you have taken economics, you know what is opportunity cost. So anyway, that was it, yeah. Okay, there are two types of functions of price. One is called rational function, the other one is called allocated function of price. The first one say the one who could value it the most, who can afford to pay the most, get it. Example here is Mona Lisa pictures. And this is days before I knew Donald Trump is going to be president of the United States. So when this example was given, he was considered a billionaire. So he's willing to buy Mona Lisa picture because nobody could buy the real one. The real one is in France today for $5 billion. So, well, how many of you have read about it was a recent incident in Paris in this famous museum? That's where the Mona Lisa picture is. Yeah, I'm going to see it this summer. So, right, I'm planning a trip to France in the summer. But anyway, so the terrorist was trying to, you know, I don't know what happened then, but maybe they wanted to get that Mona Lisa picture. I don't know. But so if Donald Trump is willing to pay $5 billion for it, you think people like us can afford that kind of money? No, not in a million 8 years, right? So now, so he values the most, he's willing to pay it, so that goes to him. So this is called willingness to pay, and that's your demand curve, basically. You see, you start to see that economics is interesting. And that's basically your demand curve. He's willing to pay up here $5 billion. And some of us say, oh, maybe, I don't know, $20. You could get a copy of Mona Lisa, maybe for $20. And maybe you get out the phone and say free, you know, you can print it out from internet, black and white. Anyway, that's one function of price. The other one is allocated function. Allocated function has got something to do with certain market under perfect competition is too crowded. Remember we talked about how perfect competition is like, hey, you are a small player. You're in a big industry, and you just add water in the bucket full of water. So you're like nobody. Well, yes, you're somebody, but then you're not so significantly affect the whole market. So this is talking about perfect competition there. You know, the price is actually direct resources away from overcrowded market towards market that are underserved. Now you look at hairstylist business today, right? It's everywhere. If you go to any small town, you know, there will be at least 1 or 2 hairstylists. Get your hair cut. How much is it? For guys, $10, $13, somewhere there. What about for ladies?
30.
How much?
Like
30?
30.
30? Okay. Very long hair, they charge more. I think mine was like 15. Could be, yeah. Anyway, so now it's not difficult to set up hairstylist shop if you want to, you know, go to some kind of training, you get certificate. So this is like perfect competition. A haircut is a haircut. Although there are quality involved here, and some of you are, you know, used to going to the same hairstylist. So the point is, more or less, you know, the price for a haircut for guys' hair is like, what? Anywhere between, let's just say $12, okay, on average. So, you know, if they're not doing well in this hairstylist business, they could just close shop and then get out. Because resources are mobile. You could get in and get out easily. However, and that's why that market is so overcrowded. But what about software industry? Not so. How many of you could do programming? Okay, some of you are computer science major, you do JavaScript and stuff like that. HTML, you know, programming. So now that is a market that is underserved right now. Earns a lot of money because it's a very demanding industry. So that's one example of what is allocated functions of price. Next, we want to look at this very important assumption of perfect competition. Now remember, some of them is you got many buyers and sellers, you're well informed, right? Remember that? Resources are very mobile, and you are a price taker for that. Now, one other important assumption, I'm going to write it down for you. I think you should write down. One major assumption of a PC market. And again, this is PC does not stand for personal computer. It stands for perfectly competitive market. This is the point, free entry and access into or from the market or the industry. Free, not so much about economic resources. I'm talking about monetary value, but more like it's very easy to get in, it's very easy to get out. So, now, this is what happened. If the industry, like say computing industry, started out with positive economic profit, then basically other people in the industry would say, oh yeah, this is a very lucrative industry, I should get into it. It gives people incentive to want to get in and get a piece of that profit pie. So this is what happened. Because of the positive economic profit, it still gives incentive for other firms to enter this industry. Now, if more firms enter into the industry, according to your supply curve upward sloping, your supply curve will increase, it will shift to the right. Very good. And if you keep shifting to the right, prices will fall for economic profit driven to zero. Don't copy this down yet. Look at your book. You should have this graph in your book somewhere. Okay? So you start off with this. I'm going to go back to that slide. So this is your demand and supply curve. So you start out with economic profit. That's a starting point. Attracts more firms to enter supply curve will shift to the right. As supply curve shift to the right, look what happened. The equilibrium price drop. We've done this exercise many times. So price drop, quantity goes up. That's not so important about quantity here, but the price. Now, did anybody remember, did I do this graph for you the other day? I mentioned the term soup bowl. I think I did, okay. This is your average total cost or average variable cost. This is the bottom of the soup bowl. You know, it shapes like a bowl, yeah. So this is the bottom of it, or the minimum point or average cost. And we have 3 points. Remember, this is your price. Let's say this is P naught. This is where price equals to ATC, and your break even. If the price rises up from $10 to say 15, you're at P1. And you could see that the price is higher than your average total cost now, so you are making profit. However, if the price drops down, like right here, to say, $5, and you can see that, you're very far away from ABC. Your price is not even covering your average variable cost. So you're making a lot. So what this is saying is that as your price keeps dropping, likewise, like that, your profit will keep falling. Hang on, this is the other way. Yeah, I should go back to this. So this is where we started to talk about it earlier. So when your price start to fall, right, you're not covering your average variable cost, so your profit will start to fall. That means you're approaching economic loss. Well, first you have profit. Then, of course, if your prices fall, your total revenue will fall. Assuming the cost to be the same, your profits eventually fall. So then the next 2 points are extremely important. So pay attention to what I'm about to say. Economic profit eventually will be driven down to zero. So that will be right here, because this is where your break even is. And let's throw in that fishing hook called marginal cost, pass to that point. So, until your P is sufficient to cover all costs, including a normal profit. So at that point here, where price is equal to your ABC, this is known as your normal profit. So this is not in your book so much, but I'm trying to explain the concept to you. In the actual version of the book, you have it, but this is a brief edition. They somehow skipped that diagram. So what this is saying is that, yeah, if the price keep falling, but then it's still sufficient or high enough to cover all costs, then you are break even, basically, or what we call a normal profit. So at normal profit, where P equals to your ABC, it's known as zero profit. Yes, question?
Is the P standing for price or profit?
P stands for price. Yes, thank you for asking. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good question. I never thought about it. Yeah, all the P here referring to that particular one refer to price. Yeah. Now, so when you have zero profit, right? We call that long run. Please write this down. This is very important. Long run equilibrium. It's when your P equals to ATC. Well, to be a little bit more exact, P equals to ADC. Okay, or you break even. Now remember I used that expression last time. This is 10 stars here. And this is one of the diagrams that is so famous in economics. I told my economic club student, one day if you want to make t-shirt for your club, this is a good diagram. So what this is saying is that in the long run, you will stop at where P equals to ABC when you break even, because we call that freezing point. Freezing point, not so much of in terms of temperature. You know, you think about freezing weather. But freezing point in terms of the position. Remember the other day I said something like, if I point a gun at you, I know I wouldn't, but I'm just, you know, what would you do? You freeze. Because you don't know this is a child, this is a toy gun or a real one, so you want to be sure, so you freeze. When I use the expression freeze, right, it means you stay put. You don't dare to turn to the right, turn to the left, jump up or squat down. You do nothing, you stay put, you freeze yourself. It's like what it is when you have zero economic profit. You're not, whereas if you're above here, right, you're making profit. So you might go on. And whereas if you're below here, talking about price, you're making a loss. So you might decide, you know, maybe it's time to fold the business, you know, move to a more lucrative industry like computing industry, instead of staying in the hairstylist business. So that zero profit makes everybody happy because everything stops. Because as long as you have profit, more firms will enter. They'll keep entering until you hit the negative. But then, again, this is a procedure. At first you're up, you're making profit, but then as more firm comes up, you know, the supply could keep shifting to the right. So in other textbooks, you see the MC curve keeps shifting to the right until eventually it hit that. It could go further, but when it hit that point is when other firms stop entering. Because they say, uh-oh, that's a sign that we shouldn't get in because, you know, pretty much everybody, you heard this term before, indifferent. What is indifferent? You don't care. You're indifferent. If I hit you, you're indifferent means you don't react. You're not gonna smile, you're not gonna cry, you're just basically indifferent. So you're insensitive to some extent. So sometime in economics we use that term, indifference. There's such a thing called indifference curve, but I took it out from a book, you know. I chose this book because this book does not cover it. So if you take this course, another professor did cover that indifference. It's not so easy for students to understand for principals level. Okay, let's look at the other extreme. The other extreme is when here you have negative economic profit. When you have negative economic profit, that means you're having a loss. What does it tell other people?
To get out of there.
It's time to get out. Very good. Instead of keep coming in, hey, you don't want to get into this business, it's making a loss. So some firms want to exit. So same thing, they will keep exiting, and as they keep exiting, supply could keep shifting to the left now instead of right. Very good. And then go back to that same diagram is in your book as well. If supply could keep shifting to the left, prices will rise. Okay, but you know that at the beginning you have loss. You're already at a loss at the beginning. That means you're at the bottom here. So if people keep exiting, hey, you get a bigger piece of the pie in the industry. So your profit will keep rising. Well, at the beginning, it's just, we use the expression, you're minimizing your profit because you're not quite making a positive profit yet. You're still in a negative, but then you become less and less negative. That makes sense? Instead of losing 100,000 a year, you're losing 20,000 a year. That was better than before, but still you're in a loss. But then slowly you inch up until you get to break even point, and then eventually you go up. You make profit. So that's because all the supply curve are shifting to the left. So this is what happens. Supply curve keep shifting to the left. Prices keep goes up, and when that happens, we use the term losses fall. Well, that means your profit is increasing, actually from 1 point negative to 0, and then finally to positive. So until all the opportunity costs have been covered. So what does that mean? You reach that normal profit, which is the break-even point. And once again, you will be at that 0 economic profit. So it keeps shifting, it gets to that 0 economic profit, and then all strive ceased at that point. Yes?
ABC stands for average cost, right?
Yes, average variable cost,
Average
ABC.
variable cost.
Yes. So until you get to that 0 profit tendency or competitive market. So what this is saying is that in the long run, in a perfect competitive firm, because there are free entry and exit, right here, this is very important one. So therefore, in the long run, you get to the point where you break even. Well, what's so special about this break-even? The break-even point is designed to tell everybody that this is it. Don't come in anymore. Because that's a point of decision, really. I mean, they could keep coming in, but then, after that point, you start seeing profit, and then the other situation we talk about kicks in. So whichever way you look at, whether it's like a shift to the right or to the left, at the end you keep approaching that break-even point, and that's when it stops. And that's why we say that's when everybody stop striving, go forward or go backward, and so we call that a long-run equilibrium. Although that could be going on for a while, maybe a few years before you start to go up and come down. But nevertheless, in economics, we call that long-run equilibrium, because that's when everybody's happy, at least for a while. Let's introduce this very important term in economics called invisible theory. This is, how many of you heard of Adam Smith? This is a very English term. How many of you? Okay. What do you know about Adam Smith, Miss Trina?
We talked about Adam Smith and the invisible and the
Yeah.
ethics class about
Oh, okay.
basically how people will generally do what's right for the people.
Very good. Ethan, where did you hear that?
In high school, you learn about his enlightenment theories.
Okay, that's amazing you heard about it since high school. So he's known as the father of economics. He's long dead now. But he's famous for this so-called invisible hand theory. What is invisible hand theory? the actions of independent self-interested buyers and sellers will often result in the most efficient allocation of resources. Market are efficient. Well, there's a lot to say to that. How many of you have gone to grocery store to buy stuff, and then at the end of the shopping, you go and check out, right? You're gonna line up in one of the counters. Let me ask you, which one do you choose?
The shortest line.
The shortest line? Is that most of you agree? Okay, very good. And still looking for the most prettiest cashier, right? Go for the shortest line. That's common sense. But have you noticed that when you make your steps towards that shortest line, other people got ahead of you sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what do? You scramble again to get other line. Come on. Oh, that one's shorter. Get over there. Somebody get and then at the end they're all more or less the same. The length of the line. That's called invisible hand theory because people are typically selfish. You know, your selfish action actually resulted in efficient allocation of resources. How many, well, hey, most of you have cars, yes. Red one and black one. So you're getting on the road, you're driving to I-95. How many times when you encounter some sort of a fender bender down, a couple of miles down the road, and then the traffic just, right, all the way, stop up, all the way to where you are. And you're in the 4 lanes. What's your strategies? When you slow down like that?
Go to the next one.
You go for the lane that is moving, right? Okay? Instead of like staying behind and saying, oh, my lane is not moving. So the natural reaction is to look for that lane that is moving the fastest. Usually it's a link lane because you can cut like boop, boop, you know. That's usually the strategy. But have you noticed that when you try to do that, everybody does the same? At the end, that's the slowest lane. Right? Most of us have experienced that. You say, why did I switch? You might tell your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend that, well, you told me to switch, look what happened. The minute right after you switch lane, you are the slowest lane you are in.
Everybody's getting over there.
Right. So that's your invisible hand theory in operation. Okay, so most people are selfish. And they didn't know that when they act that way at the end, you know, the lanes are more or less the same. Because of people make it happen. There's an invisible hand behind. This is an interesting cartoon. I keep thinking it's in your book, but it's not. Or you could read this. Corporate leaders, they get it together. Outside this town called Darien, Connecticut. There's actually a town like that in Connecticut today, where one of them actually claimed to have seen the invisible hand of the marketplace. So, again, you know, this is just a cartoon. So what's the moral here? We laugh. We say, well, no, you don't see it. You don't actually see invisible hand. Because it is invisible, excuse me. That's what the word means. You can't see it. It's the market forces. So today we use the invisible hand theory to describe a situation in which if you do nothing, that's good because there will be an invisible hand, the market forces that make everything push towards efficiency. Now, next thing we want to say, well, we haven't got to that yet, so let's read further about free and access. Remember, I just erased it and told you that's a very important description. I'm sure I asked that on the test some way. The implication of this invisible hand theory depends critically on the freedom of firms to enter and exit. So that is only possible because you could freely get out, you could freely get in. Talking about the market situation, perfectly competitive market. However, in the real world, there are a lot of time in business school, a different market structure, you have barriers to entry. Does everybody understand the word barriers? Impediments? Okay. Such as there might be legal barrier, there might be natural barrier, such as monopoly. Now, you read about in South Africa, they're famous to produce things like diamond and gold, because they're endowed with natural resources like diamond and gold. However, the diamond especially was controlled by this company called De Beers. It was a Dutch company. De Beers is Dutch. I think it was bought over by a Greek tycoon recently when I was visiting South Africa 3 years ago. I visited one of their diamond mines. I was told that it was took over now by Greek tycoons. So what they have is they have their natural resources right next to their diamond mines. So they're endowed with it. So they have what you call natural monopoly. Now, legal monopoly would be like Microsoft operating system. Today we know they control, what, 95, maybe higher % of the operating system. But in the old days, not too long ago, you do have other operating systems like Linux. How many of you heard about Linux? Okay. Or Sun and Mac, when it first came out, it has its own operating system as well. So, do you think anybody could beat Microsoft today by coming, trying to enter the market and say, oh, you want to beat Microsoft? Good luck. Because Microsoft has been around for such a long time. So you got that first mover advantage. You got that barrier, because they already learned all the tricks in the industry. You could come in as a very small player and then slowly. And in year 2000, I remember when internet became commercialized, I read in the paper that was the year between the year 2000 and 2002, might be 2003, just before the market crash, the technological stocks crashed in the year 2000, March of 2000. So I think in the late 90s when internet first came out, all these stocks of these technological companies are so valuable, like Yahoo, Amazon.com, Google's, Netscape, Seagate, Asus, Dell. All these are like big computers, chip makers and motherboard makers. So, what happened was there was a legal barrier. So, for example, Microsoft, I mentioned it, it's not so easy to just beat them because they have so much built under them. This has been so many years since 80s. Okay, so in the case of monopoly, really when we talk about barriers to entry, that's the opposite of that. So in other words, you no longer have this so-called free entry and exit. There's now barrier. The barrier could be real. Well, a lot of the time it's real, like legal barrier, natural barrier. So they have copyright laws, for example. Microsoft does have that. And allow price to be higher than opportunity cost production. That means you price it above MC. So in the case of monopoly, you price your product above marginal cost. In the case of perfect competition, please write this down. This is important difference. You price it according to MC. So this has market power. Market power is the ability to charge a price above MC. The degree of market power depending on how much you can raise that price above MC. What do you think? Microsoft operating system, it's now zero marginal cost. After you produce so many billions of copies, yes, question?
It says monopoly and then it says something competition. What does that say?
I'm sorry? Monopoly is like you're the only seller in the market.
No, perfect. Is that perfect
Oh, this is perfect competition.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are contrasting the two of them, yeah. Okay? So this one has no market power because you know that this is known as price maker. And this guy is known as price maker. Okay, so now let's look at the business of chef. So we talked about Lance Armstrong the other day, Tiger Woods, Magic Johnson, that have special talent. So therefore, your supply curve is very straight, inelastic. On the supply side, not the demand side, because that refers to your talents, your inborn talents. So now we want to define this term called economic range. Economic range refers to something, let's read the definition, the portion of the payment for factor of production. So in this case, we're referring to the wages, okay, of the chef that exceeds the owner's reservation. So in other words, if you're a very famous chef, you might have a price in mind, like, let's say my reservation price is $100. Let's see which of the 5-star hotel can pay me that salary. And let's say you're so good that some hotels are willing to pay $120,000. So that $20,000 above $100,000, your reservation price is known as economic range. And then we say this economic range is not like economic profit, because market forces, this invisible hand, would not push the economic range to zero. Because it's not like many firms. You're the only one. You're the only supplier because you're so special. So talking about people like Lance Armstrong, Magic Johnson, is only one, very unique. Because your input or your talents, it's so unique that it cannot be replicated easily. So that's basically is the definition for economic range. If you look up the book, it says the same thing. So that one is just really want to try to tell you the difference between the two. Economic range. Okay, let's look at this situation one more time, give another example. Now let's just say that we introduce something called cost-saving innovation. Is cost-saving good for business? Answer is yes. Now let's just say some firms in certain industry have developed some kind of cost-saving innovation. So again, the firms who are in this industry have a choice whether to adopt it or not to adopt it. And let's just say if you adopt it, you will reap economic profit in the short run because it's saving you costs. But a lot of time people don't jump into this bandwagon so fast. They say, well, let's wait a little bit and see how the industry reacts because I don't want to be the first scapegoat. You can look about it that way, or you can look at it like, well, there's opportunity, let's jump in and see how we're doing. Because it's risk-taking, business is like that, okay? So now, if firms start to jump in the long run, we expect the market supply curve to shift right, like what you saw earlier. And then prices will fall. As prices fall, we know that. Some of the firms that do not use the new technology will earn economic losses. So these are the non-adopters of the cost savings innovation. So they're left behind. Whereas the one that jump in, at first they have some profit, but then as more and more into, profit become less and less. And so finally, firms that adopt, and because it's such a good thing to do, or at least in theory, more firms enter. So it pushes it towards, because of that free entry and exit assumption, it pushes it towards that zero economic profit again. And so we say that competition, especially in the perfect competition sense, not in the monopoly sense, we make sure that at the end the cost savings is being passed along to the consumer in the long run. And then we want to get to the point, this is probably the most important part. When market reaches equilibrium, there's no more cash on the table. You heard that expression, if I put $100 here, cash on the table today, if I just simply walked out and class times is up, you know, I forgot everything, I have an emergency around now. Most of you would just sit there and keep watching that money and see who will take that money. Right? I don't think anybody will all walk out with that $100 sit there. Because there's this thing called cash on the table. So therefore, all opportunity for gain are exhausted. It implies that the prices of resources privately owned would tend to reflect the economic value. It implies that profit makers are first to act on profit-making opportunity. I watched an interesting video on YouTube the other day where this company is doing some sort of experiment. So they leave some cash, you know, $100 maybe like a few $100 bill on the dashboard of the car, and some on the seat, you know, and they roll down the window. So just a little bit, so people could reach in and get them. Okay, so they did an experiment in two neighborhoods. One is a wealthy neighborhood, and they have camera, you know, rolling, hidden camera. So when they show it in the wealthy neighborhood, it's interesting. Somebody would see it and take it and run. And then, of course, they call and say, buddy, you know, are we doing an experiment, you know, and would you return the money? The person was so unhappy, slapped the money on the floor, you know, and walk off. And then in another situation, same wealthy neighborhood, when the person was confronted and they want to admit, like first they say, well, and then we say, we got it on the camera, you know, you took it. Such a resistance. And then they did it in the poor neighborhood where there are a lot of homeless people. And it's very interesting. So they show a man, same thing, walk slowly away. And when it was confronted, that man didn't resist at all, just returned the money, just like that. Very straightforward. Money didn't belong to him, you know. He didn't argue or anything. And then in the second instance, it's really just really heartwarming. You saw this man like put his body through the window, you know. He was doing some adjusting, you know. And you thought like, gosh, what's he doing? Like taking the money or something, you know, trying to get as much as possible, like. And when they confronted him, you know, he said he didn't take it. And they talked for a while. They said, we got a camera, you know, showing that. Say, I didn't take it. That was really like, And I'm also like, And it turns out that he really was telling the truth. He didn't take it. What he did was, he put all the money together at one spot, hidden under I guess hidden under the dashboard is a part that shows, you know, so nobody would see it and take it. That's in the poor neighborhood. So the man was so impressed, you know, he went back to the car and checked, yes, they all stacked together, you know, instead of all over the place, you know. He ended up giving that money to the man, you know, as a reward. And took him to a shelter because he said he didn't have a right to go to the shelter. So that is so interesting about this cash on the table. Who would take it? It depends. Which neighborhood, it seems like, you know, in this particular incident that I relate to you. So let's see. Okay, this is my final one before I let you go. So now let's look at this. Market equilibrium does not mean the resulting allocation of resources is the best view from society viewpoint. Because, write this down as well before you leave. Equilibrium implies efficiency. If you take a PhD level economic class, the whole class is talking about proving it mathematically that equilibrium implies efficiency, and efficiency on the reverse also implies equilibrium. So make sure you write this down. But then it's not true if it is in a case where you have pollution, externality. We call it smart for one, dumb for all. Because in the case of having pollution, you know, it's smart on the viewpoint of the supplier, people who dump the toxins into the river, excuse me. But then, you know, to other people who are hurt, you know, it doesn't make sense. It's known as dump for all. so next class, I will get to this Pareto efficiency. Please do not miss the class because there's some calculation of consumer surplus and producer surplus that are kind of like complicated because you have to use the area of the triangle. So on your test, we will ask questions like that on calculating consumer surplus and producer surplus. Okay, very good. And if you have not handed in your assignment, remember that you still have the next 24 hours. So I'm still around to 5, so if you bring it to me by 5, you still have a chance.